Everybody's like, gotta get Austin out. We're like, all right, we'll make it happen. Well, everybody, I mean, Sarah.
That's funny.
We give a shout out when the shout out is due. Well, Mr. Austin, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. You have a really interesting journey. I really enjoyed, looking at your profile, and the things that you're doing are amazing. I know you were doing some ninja stuff, so let's talk about that.
We look at those things. We look at, street count, traffic count. If you can get access to the planned future developments, the population is growing. Like, those are great metrics to use too. Usually, by the time we start working with the group, they've kind of already identified the cities they want to go to. It's just more or less identifying the specific areas. And so there's a lot of times where, we're looking at identifying an area, and the exact perfect intersection and corner, there's nothing there. It's a plot of land. So what do you do as a dentist, right? Do you want to develop? Okay, like, maybe. So what does that look like? Well, you're going to have to come up with the capital for the down payment. You're going to have to work with the city on the zoning. Like, you're going to have to work with the architects and the architectural drawings. You're going to have to create the environmental study. And then you're either going to, and that's all fine and good. Like, there's a lot of people willing to do that. But then in addition to that, and I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying know the cost. Because in addition to that, the most expensive is single tenant building. They've got good marketing campaigns that can get them to break even in like 2 months, profitability in 6 months, right? And so if you can do that, I would argue that's probably a lot better than doing an acquisition. I think that direct mailers work. I think that online bidding platforms like Google and Facebook work. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff works. It's just a question of, like, how much do you want to pay? And so the trade-off is what you can, you're paying for eyeballs one way or another. So you're going to pay for eyeballs on Facebook and Google, or you're going to pay for eyeballs with your rent and street visibility. And I think, like, originally a lot of this stuff was done because we wanted to fix starvation, and we wanted to make the cost of calories go down. So maybe originally it was done with good intentions. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but somewhere along the lines, the incentives got totally perverse. And now obesity is more of a problem in the world than starvation. So because we partner with people who want to be, like, passive investors. Mm-hmm. Our emphasis is always on, like, the risk adjusted returns. So, like, finding deals that we're protecting the downside. And that's just a lot of real estate in general compared to other things. But yeah. So like the same as the DSOs, right? Like, you can only scale, you're kind of limited to scale based on how much money you have at any one time for down payments.
All right, everyone. Well, today we're doing things a little bit differently. We got this thing messed up, but hey, we're back in the game. Today we got Mr. Austin Hara on the DentMent podcast. Mr. Austin, how you doing?
Hey, man, doing really good. Nice to be here. Nice to meet you.
I know, man. Nice to meet you. We've been hearing so much. Everybody's like, gotta get Austin out. We're like, all right, we'll make it happen. Well, everybody, I mean, Sarah.
That's funny.
We give a shout out when the shout out is due. Well, Mr. Austin, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. You have a really interesting journey. I really enjoyed, looking at your profile, and the things that you're doing are amazing. I know you were doing some ninja stuff, so let's talk about that and get into it. Well, tell the audience who you are, what you do, man, and let's get into it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and give the shortened and sweet and condensed version of how I got into dental and real estate and that sort of thing. But, I was a professional wakeboarder for a long time. Started doing that when I was 12, like, very passionate about it. And that got me really into health and fitness. And so I was traveling around. I ended up, like, putting down roots in Orlando. And then as I was getting older, I kind of realized, hey, I'm not going to be able to ride this wave forever. And so I'm going to have to start thinking about exit strategies. And by older in wakeboard years was, I was like 24. It's like, oh man, a lot of guys retire at 23. So I did it for a few more years, but I started doing some fitness. I started opening some fitness centers. And so it was kind of in the background. And at 2017, I retired from wakeboarding and then focused kind of full time on the fitness centers. And so we were growing by de novo. And that's when I met my partner. He helped me find a location for it was going to be my fourth location. And he did, like, this really kind of in-depth analysis and competition analysis, demographic analysis. And it was a lot more involved than any of the brokers that I had worked with in the past. And I was like, oh, wow, this is, like, pretty cool. I actually feel like I have good data around where I'm supposed to go. Like, in my head, I'm from Orlando. Like I mentioned a second ago, I had these areas where it's like, you know what? I don't want to go to Kissimmee. That's kind of garbage. I want to go to Winter Park. That's, like, the cool, sexy area. And what I found was when we ran the analysis, Winter Park was super saturated. Rents were really high, tons of competition. And Kissimmee was wide open, Lake Nona to be specific, like Hunters Creek, Lake Nona area. And so I just realized you can't make good decisions without good data. So that was, like, really impactful for me. I got in a disagreement with the franchisor of the gyms. I sold the gyms in 2019, right before COVID. And so I'm like so thankful that we did not get along because I dodged that bullet. And then my partner was like, hey, would you come start working with me full time in the commercial real estate side? So, as a client first, I was already on board with the process. So we just started doing that with healthcare groups, and a lot in the dental. So the idea is like, hey, where is the most amount of your competition? Where are they located, right? Find that. And then where your ideal patients are going, overlay those on a map and figure out where is the least amount of competition with the most amount of ideal patients. So yeah, we kind of do that now, and we look to buy the real estate whenever possible. So we'll if nothing's available, we'll buy and develop and lease it back to the dental group. But yeah, that's the story of how I got here. And, of course, there's a lot of things in the background, right? Like I bought some residential properties that I turned into Airbnbs and wedding venues. When I retired from wakeboarding, my wife and I started doing American Ninja Warrior. So my story is like kind of, and we still do that. Like my wife should be on the show this year, but I'm not. I sat this one out, but she should be. But I feel like everybody's story is kind of crazy. Like we have that. There's not one thing that defines us. We have a bunch of different things at any one point in time. And then of course I'm a husband and a father, and so all those things kind of brought me to where I am.
Yeah, man, that's an amazing story, man. The fact I always like to, it's so fascinating to me. The people that I had Dr. Arnold on my podcast. He's like, if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person in the room. And I found that to be so true. It's like the people that have so much going on in their life, they're able to accomplish so much more than the people that have all this time and they don't accomplish anything. It's so fascinating to see like how people are utilizing their time and getting things done and completed. But I just want to kind of ask you, like, what are some of the key factors you guys look for when you're going out and trying to kind of get a practice for a dentist? It's like, what are some of the key things that you guys look for, especially for the de novo practice? When it comes to the real estate part of it, what are some of the researches that you guys do to make sure that, hey, this is a good area, this is a good practice?
Yeah, so a lot of people use what's called Buxton
Mm-hmm.
to do their actual demographic research. We're not super happy with them. That's something they not that we're I don't know. They don't do a terrible job. I don't want to throw them under the bus or anything. It's just they're working on limited data, right? They're using census data, which was last done in 2012, and you're kind of having to project that forward. We prefer Pitney Bowes. We have the subscriptions, all the subscriptions about for every market that we pay for. We feel like their data is a little bit more accurate. It actually pulls grocer anchor data. So think Publix, Target, Walmart, etc. Those actually tend to have the most data and the most reliable data, in our opinion. So what we'll do is we'll figure out like, hey, where is your ideal patients? Where are they already going? And that's different for every group. You could be Medicare or Medicaid or PPO or pediatrics or geriatrics or whatever it is. There's a lot of different avatars out there. There's a lot of different ideal patients for each group. So once we kind of go through and define what is a key group, then we can start to tier the grocer anchors around what lines up with those groups. So for instance, Whole Foods is not going to be good for a Medicare, Medicaid group, but Walmart is not going to be great for a PPO group, And so you can start to color coordinate the groups and the grocers when you overlay them on the map to get a sense of like visually, okay, green is good, red is bad, lots of greens here, lots of reds here. And we have blue and orange, like we tier them 1 through 4, 1 through 5. But it kind of gives you a visual sense of like, oh, like look at all these greens stacked up over here. Oh, and look, there's less competition over here. And so then we start to kind of pinpoint those areas. So to get even more specific, after that, what makes up a good area, we look for things like street visibility, because sometimes you don't think about like, do you have a lot of trees and shrubbery and whatever blocking you? Like people these days, it's really about convenience for the customer. There's a reason that all the largest DSOs are taking these really expensive retail spaces because as Tony Robbins likes to say, success leaves clues. So they're doing that for a reason. Yes, it's more expensive, but they're viewing the rent as a factor of their marketing. Well, we look at those things. We look at, street count, traffic count. If you can get access to the planned future developments, the population is growing. Like those are great metrics to use too. Usually by the time we start working with a group, they've kind of already identified the cities they want to go to. It's just more or less identifying the specific areas. And so there's a lot of times where, we're looking at identifying an area and the exact perfect intersection and corner, there's nothing there. It's a plot of land. So what do you do as a dentist, right? Do you want to develop? Okay. Like maybe. So what does that look like? Well, you're going to have to come up with the capital for the down payment. You're going to have to work with the city on the zoning. Like you're going to have to work with the architects and the architectural drawings. You're going to have to create the environmental study. And then you're either going to, and that's all fine and good. Like there's a lot of people willing to do that. But then in addition to that, and I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying know the cost. Because in addition to that, the most expensive rent is single tenant building, not maximizing the square footage that's available for the pad, right? So if you have an acre pad, that's for sale, that's perfect. And you could theoretically fit 8,000 square feet, but your practice occupies 2 to 3 to 4. Like you get two choices. Either you're not going to optimize the space, you're going to put down your private practice, or you're going to build a multi-practice and you're going to take on the risk of trying to find and hope that other good quality, not just anybody, but good quality tenants that are reliable to sign on their lease are going to come in. So we'll buy and develop and partner with the tenants on that side too. So anyways, does that answer your question? I feel like that was a long-winded answer.
No, yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's so interesting to kind of like see how much it goes into the building and establishment of those de novos. But the one thing I wanted to ask you, so when you guys are doing your research and you're looking at the population count, what is like for dentists? They're like, oh, we want like 2,000 for every 2,000 population, we want one dentist. So like, what are the key components that you look there to make sure that when they're open doors, that the practice is actually going to function?
Yeah, a lot of times dentists have already kind of identified what they are comfortable with. I think at 1,000 people per dentist is like kind of the minimum you want to shoot for. We work with some groups that only want 3,000 people per dentist, right? So the more you can get above that, the better. But like, just if we're looking for a hard number, I would say 1,000 per dentist is probably like the minimum you want to go.
As well, that's amazing. And then, so when you guys are, so are the dentists buying the land themselves, or are they just like renting the land and then they build over it, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so our job is just to support the dental group, whatever they want to do. A lot of groups that we work with want to buy the real estate. So in those situations, we're just acting as the broker. That happens a lot. I would say 4 out of 5 times. The dental group, they either like the real estate is not for the ideal pad is not for sale. And you don't really want to sacrifice your dental business at the cost of your real estate business. So we see a lot of people that will not open or will choose bad locations because they're for sale, because they don't want to quote unquote rent. But then it's not the best location for their business. And I, personally, look, I'm a real estate guy. I like real estate, but I think you're going to make a lot more money operating your dental practice than you will building some equity, in a random office recessed couple of streets rows back off the main drag. We always try and coach them like, hey, do what's best for the business. If you want to buy the real estate that's available, then we're going to help you buy it. But a lot of times it's hard for good dentists to actually do the development process, right? So what we'll do, and then if you, like we were talking about earlier, if you're a dentist and you want to buy and develop and you do a single freestanding building, you're just going to be paying the highest rent. Well, said differently, the cost per square foot is going to be the highest because it's not optimized. So what we do is we'll buy it, we'll develop it. We are the landlord and the owner, but we bring in other tenants that we've worked with. Like, we've done deals with Starbucks and Chase and Panda and Chipotle, like, lots of national tenant groups. So we can fill the balance of the space with our relationships. That's really like the main thing. And then that's going to bring down the rent for the healthcare operator that we work with. So look, a lot of people want to own their own real estate. If you do, great. Like, we're happy to just help you find the perfect spot and get out of the way. But for a lot of groups, it's just not feasible to develop when they find something. And so in those groups, that's who we work with. So the short answer is like, whatever they want to do, we're not here to stop them from doing anything. But for the groups who it's not feasible to develop their own real estate, that's where we come in, and that's where people find us to be the most beneficial.
That's amazing, man. So when we're talking about, for the doctor or the dentist, if they want to come out and let's say, they want to get like a single building and all that. So why do you think is it more expensive because of being in like a free space, or is it the location that makes it more expensive? Like, what are some of the things that is like a key factor that makes that price so different?
So if you just think about the land, first of all, this parcel is going to be subdivided in a way that the owner wants to get rid of it. It's rare that they've got like a tiny, really tiny, small parcel for only 2,000 square feet. Like normally it's like an acre to 3/4 of an acre or 2 acres. Like, it's a larger piece of land where you can fit a lot more on that property. So if you buy an acre and you only want to build a 2,000 square foot dental practice, you're kind of overspending on the land. Now, along that same line of thinking, let's move through the building costs. You're going to have to get permits no matter what. You're going to have to get architectural designs no matter what. The cost for architectural designs for a 2,000 square foot building versus a 8,000 square foot building, it's not 4 times more. You know what I mean? It's more, but it's not 4 times more. So you get more. And then think about that when you break ground. Think about that when you get piping laid, when you get electricity ran, when you lay the foundation, and then even building the 4 walls. There's just more economies of scale as you grow, as you add and maximize the space. So is that what you're asking?
Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. So essentially just going in, building out, and just renting the remaining space to somebody else. so you can reduce your costs essentially. For the dentists, I wanted to know because they always talk about this, right? Oh, go buy existing practice, go buy existing practice because you're already gonna have a cash flow. For the dentists that want to purchase their own practice, which route do you think makes more sense? Do you think
This is
it's
yeah, we talk about this a lot on my podcast, the Helping Healthcare Scale podcast. It's like the timeless debate: acquisitions versus de novos. So there's pros and cons. I really think it depends on like how you're set up, because some people are really optimized for de novos and some people are really optimized for acquisitions. So like it's hard for me to necessarily say there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but what I will say is like the consensus is pretty much acquisitions, like you talked about. And I don't think that's good to just say, yeah, like always do acquisitions. I mean, you really got to understand the trade-offs, because at what price does an acquisition start to make sense? Like, yeah, it's great. You're buying existing EBITDA. Sure, that helps have cash flow day one. That's awesome. But like, are you paying a 7x, 8x, 9x, 10x? I mean, the question is like, can you get, so yeah, you're buying, day one, you get money in your pocket, but can you borrow from the bank to do a de novo, right? Where it's like, it's not having you pull too much money out of your pocket for whatever period of time. So the thing about acquisitions, especially when you start to get backed by private equity and take on partners, they're all about IRR, which is time driven. So the faster you can get in and out of a deal, the higher it makes your IRR. So you kind of risk falling into the trap of, built to sell, not built to last. Where as a de novo, like, you're building that to last most likely. You're an operational business, not an arbitrager, not a roll up, not a roll up platform. So I think that the benefits of a de novo compared to a roll up or an acquisition is, number one, you can build with the culture in mind. That's the thing that a lot of people don't really talk about with the numbers on the spreadsheet. Is like, hey, look, they're doing 2 million top line, and 20% EBITDA. That's whatever, 400K added to our EBITDA. Like, we're worth 11, they're worth a 7. We're making arbitrage out of that EBITDA. Like, now we've said essentially added 600K value from buying this at 400K. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, by the time you consider the different in multiples, and so yeah, that's what you look at, but you don't realize like what systems are they using, what software are they using, how long is that going to take, and how expensive is that going to be to bring it together with yours? Are you going to combine cultures? Are you going to run as separate ships? Because both of those are hard to do, and then it's just like the pure cost, like with interest rates being really high, like at what multiple does it just really stop to make sense? And so when you build from the ground up, you don't have to worry about paying a multiple. You just have to worry about being able to last as long as you're running that deficit until you build it up. And there are groups that have great strategies for de novos. Lots of really good groups are doing de novos, and they're able to, come in, and even areas that are saturated with dentists, they have a better product, so they start taking market share. And then they've got good marketing campaigns that can get them to break even in like 2 months, profitability in 6 months, right? And so if you can do that, I would argue that's probably a lot better than doing an acquisition. But there's pros and cons to both.
As far as you mentioned something, so what is that process like for the dentist when they're going to the bank? Because as you know, the bank sometimes says, "Oh man, you gotta have this, that." So what is that process is like when you go into the bank to get the loan for that new practice or the de novo practice? I know it's not your expertise, but I'm sure you work with the banks and you have some information on that.
Yeah, banks love.
Does that make it harder? Does that make it harder as far as getting the loan for the de novo?
For sure. I mean, banks love private onesie twosie practices where the primary doctor can be there, he can hop around, he can do everything. When you start to get from 3 to 7, yeah, you got a big problem. You're really going to have to prove to them that you're capable of doing what you say you can do. So it is difficult to find lending on that. You almost have to find like a non-traditional lender. But once you get to about 7, 8 locations, I know that at the DEO, they call that the dark tunnel. Once you get on the other side of that, you've kind of proven that you can do it. You've proven that you have systems in place, that sort of thing. And then you can start tapping into a different pool of lenders.
So it's all just the lender that gives you the ability to borrow. Because I know, like for me, for example, when I was talking to Bank of America, they had so many restrictions. They're like, oh, if you want to go from 1 practice to like 3 practice, this is our process. This is how long it's going to take. Is that the motivating factor for dentists or the people to go towards that private equity instead of going to the traditional bank route?
Well, banks usually only lend a certain percentage of the loan to value, and so you can probably bootstrap your way, even using bank debt, like to whatever, a handful of locations, and then you can grow at a certain rate. You can pretty much you're bottlenecked to the speed at which you can save up the down payment for your next practice. And so if you're doing one practice a year, right, maybe you're making enough money in your existing business that you can just save up the money, boom, put the down payment, take on the debt. But a lot of people, they want to start doing multiple acquisitions or multiple de novos when they really start to scale. And that becomes unfeasible, to be self-funded for most, unless you have unless you're just, ridiculously wealthy from some other business venture or family or something like that, right? So it comes down to the scalability. Like when you really want to start scaling, you need a capital partner to be able to fund the down payment component of all of your acquisitions or de novos.
Oh, that's amazing, man. So, well, tell us about the Airbnb. How's that business?
Dude, Airbnb business is crazy, man. Yeah, so it's funny because, and when we do a development for like a dental group, we partner with them in the sense that like we'll give them some equity in that deal.
Mm.
So we're true partners, but it is long-term equity, and you're building great equity over time. But for us as the partners, like the general partners, the cash flow isn't always the best day one, right? It's when you sell and that you make an exit. With Airbnb, it's kind of the opposite. The cash flow is great day one, but you're not earning a ton of equity. So it's like really there couldn't be more different. It's very operationally intensive. I mean, it's a hospitality business at that stage. But look, I enjoy it. Like I think you got to be a little crazy, but at the same time, my cousin is in town right now, and he's helping me out, and he's painting some murals at one of our properties, and he's there when the property manager comes through, and he's running around like crazy, and he sees all the problems, and he's like, man, how do you do this? And you're buying more because we're about to buy like a big portfolio. And he's like, what's wrong with you? Like, this is so much work. And my response was like, yeah, but like anything worth doing is hard work. Like, there's no, you peel back the hood of every business. I was listening to a podcast about a guy in the board of directors. Like, he says he gets on as many boards as he can because everybody else's business looks all great from the outside. And then you sit on the board and you see, hey, this thing is held together by paperclip and bubble gum, just like mine, just in different ways. And so that's what I try to remind myself is like the days where it sucks and guests are mad and they want to charge back their credit card and leave a bad review. It's like, compared to what, right? Like what business has no problems? They just don't exist. Yeah, to answer your question, we have full-time people, like I have full-time property managers and virtual assistants, and then they have handyman, and we've got, our third-party vendors to do a whole bunch of stuff and everything like that. But it's getting better. Like there are a lot of people. I don't know when this is going to air. We're recording in April of 25, and we've seen a lot of competition leave the market. So our properties, in Orlando are doing better. And I think that that's going to be a trend here to stay. So look, it just comes down to providing good customer service, just like in dentistry, focusing on the guest experience and doing like constant and never ending innovation. We're always adding new amenities and stuff like that. But like the deal that we're taking down is like a portfolio of 3 really large luxury properties that sleep like 40 to 55 people each. And they're very, very heavily themed and amenitized. And they've got like this crazy Instagrammable viral component to them. And that's where it's going. Yeah, we're partnering with different people on that, and the returns are very strong because of this shift in the marketplace. Now, of course, we got to be cognizant of like the macro factors. Are tariffs going to have an effect, or are they or not? Right? Like, are they going to be in place long enough to really have an effect on the consumer, or do we think that we're going to get on the other side of this? Like it's kind of like the question we have to ask ourselves as allocators and as general partners of real estate deals. So I'm a little bit optimistic. I kind of think we're going to get through it, but those are the questions you got to be prepared to answer at any point in time before you take on a new acquisition.
Yeah, man. No, that's amazing. Yeah, the real estate. I always talk to my friends, man. Real estate is such a fascinating, like it's a fascinating business to be in because I feel like there's always something in it. And I just love the part of like the real estate in general. And there's just so much that goes into it. I mean, I'm always trying to learn, but there's just so much that is in it. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, we'll stick with the dentistry and figure everything else out. But
do you own your real estate?
I don't. I'm currently, I work for a DSO right now, but I'm in the process of actually purchasing a practice. So I'm working on it, trying to just figure out how I'm going to do it, what I want to do. We were actually on a call with the gentleman out in Atlanta, and they built out like 100 practices and they sold it. And I was just talking with him, and he was saying like their specialty is like de novo. That's all they do. He's like, we don't buy existing practices, and he's like, our specialty is just that, to just go in, build the practice from the ground up, and just really market it.
Are you allowed to say the name of that group?
Actually, yeah, I could tell you. So before I'm gonna find him and I'll tell you. But how, we were just talking about this. How, when you pretty much do the de novo, how important is the marketing aspect of it? Do you guys like kind of tell the dentist, hey, you need to really like do this XYZ to get your business ground up running, or is that something that you guys don't do at all?
Yeah, we kind of try and stay in our lane of real estate. Usually, when groups come to work with us, they've kind of got that piece figured out. I
Gotcha.
mean, here's what I'll say. I think that direct mailers work. I think that online bidding platforms like Google and Facebook work.
Hmm.
All of that stuff works. It's just a
Hmm.
question of like how much do you want to pay. And so the trade off is what you can. You're paying for eyeballs one way or another. So you're gonna pay for eyeballs on Facebook and Google, or you're gonna pay for eyeballs with your rent and street visibility, right?
Hmm.
It's a lot of. I'm not saying like you necessarily have to lower your marketing, but you're going to get a certain amount of patience by being in a place that's extremely visible. Like that is serving as your marketing, and your rent, is capped at 2% annual increases, whereas Google and Facebook, those are bidding platforms. They're going to go up over time.
Mm.
So that's how we look at it.
That's amazing, man. So how do you feel when the organization like the DSOs come to you guys and says we want to open in a most saturated place? How do you feel about that? Because I hear this all the time. Oh, it's too saturated. It's too saturated. Oh, this is too saturated. This market is too saturated. If someone approaches you and say I want to open a practice here, like what are the some factor that goes into that when it comes to decision making of like is it too saturated or does it really not matter if it's saturated or
So
not?
yeah, it absolutely matters.
Mm-hmm.
But you can go a couple layers deep. We've worked with groups, and this is not like something that we do ourselves in house, but we work with groups when they're looking at an area. They might find something where the demographically they like it, but there's a lot of competition. So then they start to say, why is there? Sometimes there's almost like too many dentists. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. And so they'll start to call around and they secret shop them and they look at their reviews and they find out, wow, like these dentists are doing a terrible job for whatever reason. So it's not really meeting their initial threshold numbers, like we said, 1,000 patients per dentist. Some people do 2 or 3,000. It's not meeting those thresholds, but the guys that are there are doing a really, really bad job. And so those are the ones where we hear they don't care about the saturation because they know with their systems, procedures, processes, track record, they can go in there, they can run a tight ship, they can provide a great customer experience. And yeah, they can absolutely start to take away the market share of those guys who are not doing a good job.
Wow. That's fascinating, man. Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine about this as well. Well, what do you think about what do you think about the rural area in compared to bigger city? Do you think dentistry is more, I don't know, is the practices or the de novos, are they like better if you go into rural area of America or the bigger cities? What do you think about that?
So yeah, I'm not a big fan of like those major metros. I mean, look, you know your markets, right? Like wherever
Mhm.
you're at. We personally just don't do a whole lot in like the downtown LA, downtown New York type
Mm,
thing.
mm,
Even like downtown Chicago, like super metro. We like the secondary and tertiary markets for
mhm,
sure.
mhm,
So the reason is just because like a lot of times you're paying a rent premium that's hard for healthcare to justify. So if
mhm,
you got a restaurant, or a coffee shop, and you're dependent on like a lot of that foot traffic walking by, like you can afford to pay much higher rents because people are just going to stop by in there. It's not really directly translatable into healthcare. So we like to be just a little bit on the outskirts of town. So I mean, look, Dallas is a major metro. I mean, it's got 18 different trade areas within Dallas, and
mhm.
so you can really start to get granular on which submarkets of Dallas you want to be in. And there's a bunch of them that are really, really good. And that's true for all of the cities.
Wow, that's amazing. Essentially, it's just a matter of doing the homework and figuring out where it makes sense to go, not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for us, it rarely makes sense to be super urban, like very,
Mhm.
very, very metro because of the rent costs and the cap rates.
Yeah. How is the Florida market with dentistry? I've been hearing that is getting really, really saturated. Since you're there, what do you think about that? Do you think that the Florida market has room for growth for dentistry or?
I don't know that it's like necessarily any more saturated than other areas. I know that like Texas was the best place for DSOs because of the regulation for a long time, and now that started to get really saturated. North Carolina was one of the worst places, but
Mm,
as a result, it was like a blue ocean if you could figure out how to do it, right? So yeah, look, the thing about Florida, there's like on average, 700 people a day or something moving to the state. So yeah, it's seen competition, but again, there's with the growth in population and combining with doing your processes right, you can start to beat out the competition.
the process is so important. We had a couple of guests. Why do you think the system and the process is so important in the success of a dental practice or in general any business? Why do you think everybody says you got to get the system down before you're able to like grow and do more? Why do you think that's such an important part
It's
of this
funny,
whole thing?
yeah. I was just listening to Chris Williamson and Dave Ramsey today on the Modern Wisdom podcast, and they talk
Mhm.
about this exact same thing. Ramsey breaks it down into 5 categories, and I'm gonna totally butcher it. But essentially, like category one is you're running on the treadmill. and like you have zero systems and processes. And anytime there's a fire, you go and you put it out. And then you come home at the end of the day from working 16-hour days. And your wife's like, what'd you do? You're like, I don't know, but I did a lot of it. And so because it's not written down, it's not structured, it's not organized. And so, you kind of level up like one level at a time, one system at a time, because you got to be able to give clarity to your team. And so actually we were talking about this internally with our staff, like my property manager this morning, where it's like people don't rise to the level of their ambition. You fall to the level of your systems and the level of your accountability. And it's just human nature that over time, you're going to default to the passive least resistance. You're not going to put in more effort if you never get held accountable, you never get praised, you never get rewarded for it. Like you're just going to do the easiest thing, least time and, consuming thing for yourself. So I think that's why you have to have systems, is to hold people accountable to do what it is that they know they should do and they say they're going to do. And so if you can create a system of accountability that meritocracy that rewards people who do a good job, then I think by default you're gonna start to grow, because you're gonna get patience. You're gonna get good business, and people are gonna be returned. They're gonna say good things about you. So yeah, it's just like there's a bunch of different systems out there. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but not having a system is just simply not an option.
Yeah. No, that absolutely, man. Especially in dentistry, if you don't have a system in place, you're definitely gonna crash.
What system do you guys use?
We have like Dentacon, Tricks. They use like multiple of different systems. Inside Desk. They need to sponsor me, man. I'm like, I don't want to shout. No, I'm kidding. What made you get into the ninja stuff, man? That's exciting.
Yeah. So let's see, I was a professional wakeboarder from 2006 to 2017, so 11 years, and then I retired, and my body was hurting, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And then my wife had a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, and it's an autoimmune disease. And she kind of had this like miraculous healing in 2020, and she felt like God was telling her to go do something with this, and so she wanted to apply for American Ninja Warrior. And we actually didn't get called the first year, but we did get called the second year that we applied. Like the first time she went out to go train, it was 2020, like December of 20 or January 2020, and I was like, Lisa, I do not want to go do more sports. Like my body's beat up. The last thing I want to do is like train at an elite level again. And after a week of going to the gym, I was just hooked. I was like, this is so fun. So we both started taking it very seriously. We're both very competitive people. She's amazing. She pushes through her pain. She's called the ankylosing spondylitis warrior, our ninja. And her tagline is even when it hurts. So she definitely inspires me to keep going. And now I just, I love it. So I mean, today I was at the gym, like you can see, I've still got the chalk on my hands before our recording. That's so crazy, look, it's like Jordan Peterson says, you got to play, you got to have fun, right? And that's what kids help you to do. But I think having a sport that you love is also really important too. And so we just go and we play around, and it's a great workout. So yeah, I like I said, I sat this year out. My wife will be on this season coming up in a couple months. But hopefully, the year after that, maybe I'll get it. I mean, I'm 37, competing against 22-year-olds. My clock is ticking, but I'm going to ride the wave while I can.
Age is just a number.
Yeah. The only thing about age is I found is you get older, your injuries stack. So they don't go away. Like it used to be like I hurt my ankle. Okay, I'll rest it for a few weeks. I'll get better. Okay, now I hurt my shoulder. Blah. Now it's like, oh, I just hurt my shoulder. Well, great. Now I've got my shoulder and my back and my ankle. Okay, now I hurt my neck. Well, now I've got neck, shoulder, back, ankle. The rehab list just gets longer and longer.
I know, man. I watched that American Ninja stuff. That's some hardcore stuff, man. That stuff is hard. Like your body got to be like on some crazy shape to be able to do that thing. I like you guys train for it.
Your skin can only take so much. I actually only train like an hour at a time, 3 days a week, really. So like 3 hours a week.
Wow.
I probably train longer than that, but we have other things going on.
Yeah. Are there like for your wife, does it cause her like pain and stuff when she trains?
Yeah.
She does. Wow.
Yeah. So some days are better than others. She's very strict on her diet, like trying to eat like a lot of whole organic meats and root vegetables and non-processed milk, and she loves RFK, like all the stuff that he's trying to push is like it is what she's already doing. She thinks it's insane that this stuff is legal in our countries. The diet has been a really, really, really big part. It's really not knowing about this has really negatively affected her. Like people really should watch out. If you don't, if you're working out, you can kind of like you eat whatever you want, but it's the long-term consequences that we don't realize that we're paying. And so like what you put into your body is like so important, reading the ingredients, but it's just not in our culture. So she's really, really diligent about what she eats, and that's been helping her, avoid the pain. And then when pain is good, she can have really good training days. But every now and then, she just has a flare up, and she tries to push through it as best she can.
Yeah, man. It's so funny you just mentioned that in 2015, before I was getting ready to kind of like, I was still doing my undergrad and I was getting ready to like start applying for dental school. I was having some pain in my joint. I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with like an early rheumatoid arthritis. And yeah, they were trying to put me on a bunch of medication. And then I end up connecting with a doctor out in Australia that my uncle referred me to. And I talked to him. He's like, man, it's all the food. It's the diet. It's what you
Yeah.
guys put in your body. He's like, I don't know what it is, but he's like, United States has like one of the worst diets because we eat so much like junk food and the processed food, and that causes our body to just have so much flare up and inflammation and everything else in between. As soon as I changed my diet, my pain level went down. I didn't get on any medication and everything, and it's just so amazing that that's kind of how it is. Why do you think that is, Austin? I know it's off topic, but why do you think the diet in the U.S. is kind of like that? Is it like the educational part of it? Is that
No, I think we
accessibility?
got look. I think we got hijacked by big food, like industrial farming. I mean, it's like it's so insane if you look at the food pyramid. They literally will tell you that Fruit Loops are healthier than ground beef. Like, just think about that for a second. And then not only that, like, I think everybody would commonsensically say, like, okay, yeah, this is a terrible. I shouldn't start my day with this. I shouldn't put this in my body. It's literally upside down. And then not only on the short term benefits of like how we're over carb that turns into fat, but there's the chemical dyes that they put in which have really negative long term effects. Like, they're now outlawing them. And so why is that? Well, who paid for the study for the food pyramid? It was Kellogg's and General Mills.
Wow.
Like, they paid to have those studies conducted, and that's why carbs, wheat, gluten sits at the bottom as the base of the pyramid. Like, just use first principles. Like, think about it from first principles. What makes sense? Does that make sense? You had a cow that you can go out and slaughter that humans have been eating for who knows how many thousands of years. Is supposed to be unhealthy? It's like, look, I used to be vegan for all of 2 weeks because I watched all the documentaries about why meat was so bad for you. Well, the thing is, like, I actually have a lot in common, even though I'm not at all a vegan. I get the sentiment, which is like, hey, we mistreat animals and the food is bad. Yes, like a mistreated animal and something that you feel not only is bad for the animal, it's bad for you. The way that it's and the stuff that you feed it, yeah, that's gonna be like the cheapest ground beef and the cheapest chicken, all that kind of stuff. From a macronutrient level, yes, you can get shredded and you can get ripped, but it's not good for you long term. And so that's what the vegans point to, and that's all true. But the answer is not to not eat meat. Humans were designed to eat meat for a long time. I mean, vegans is a new term, and so the issue is like how it's made. And I think like originally a lot of this stuff was done because we wanted to fix starvation and we wanted to make the cost of calories go down. So maybe originally it was done with good intentions. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but somewhere along the lines the incentives got totally perverse. And now obesity is more of a problem in the world than starvation because of all this super high calorie, low nutrient food. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it got very corrupted. There's like, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes. That's a quote from Charlie Munger.
Yeah.
These groups, these large big groups are incentivized, and then they pour tons of corporate lobbying dollars, into the politicians, right? Like, just look at the politicians. I'm not going to name names, but certain politicians don't touch it because they're lobbying. They're getting donations from them. So like, I think it served its point to bring people out of starvation. We were past that, right? We need to pivot. We need to adapt. Like, this is killing us. The food is killing us. There was no obese people 100 years ago. All the people who were on the body positivity, the second Ozempic came out, they took the shot, they got skinny. And a lot of the body positivity influencers literally died from heart attacks before the age of 40.
Yeah, that is so true. That's
so
so
stupid.
True. Yeah, I was like watching a guy. He was like super ripped. He was like shredded, and then 2 weeks later, they're like he passed away. And I was like, how is that even possible? Is it what they're eating, or is that all the steroid that they're taking? The body just gets confused. Like, what are they doing wrong? Like, what is that? What is that?
I mean, yeah, bodybuilders, like, a lot of them take steroids, absolutely. And then the thing is, it's still mass. So even though it's muscle, it's still hard on your heart. Like, a lot of those guys have heart attacks because it's not fat. They don't have as much cholesterol, but like their heart is pumping a lot of blood through all those muscles. And then, yeah, you combine that with steroids and they're probably not eating the best thing. Like, they're eating good things. They're eating high protein, but it's not necessarily long-term healthy. So yeah, it's bodybuilding is not healthy. Like health and fitness are not the same things.
No, that makes sense. I was actually we had Kylie on our podcast, and she was talking about we were talking about the vegan stuff. Even like you were talking about the process, even like this Beyond the Meat with the vegan stuff. I heard that haven't really heard a lot of good things about them because of how much they process that stuff.
Well,
So
Beyond
it's
Meat literally paid for the documentaries like Forks Over Knives that everybody went viral on Netflix 10 years ago. And I watched them too. And yeah, it got me thinking that, meat was bad. But it's like, wait a minute. Or the Beyond Burger, right? Like Beyond Burger paid for that. So it's like, how can you trust them,
yeah. Well, Austin, look at that. My partner in crime showed up 40 minutes later. He's like, he texts me. He's like, should I hop on? I'm like, yeah, hop on. Mr.
Nice.
Austin, it's fun. Hop on. But
How you
Mr.
doing?
Austin, this is massive.
Hey, man.
Sorry, I thought I was on the assumption because the Google Calendar was for like 2:15, and then Neil suddenly called me and he was like, Mr. Austin is already here. Where are you?" I was like,
yeah, we got messed up on the calendar. So Masood is in Vancouver, Canada. That's why it says 2:15.
Oh, okay, cool.
"Hey, sorry. Oh, are you also in Tennessee?"
No, I'm in Orlando.
Orlando. How was it like there? You're
That's
like,
good, man. Yeah, it's really hot this time of year. So what about you guys? Vancouver, you're West Coast, so you're probably not too cold.
No, it's never too cold, never too warm. It's pretty much always the heaven.
I don't know
Yeah,
about
I was in Toronto. I was in Toronto in February, and that was like stupid cold.
No, Toronto is shit. Toronto, like, equal everything. Nobody likes it.
That's what
I don't get
Donald
it.
Trump wants to take over.
Yeah, the 51st.
Very bullshit.
Well,
I'm not
Austin,
sure
you
what-
think that's gonna happen or no?
No, yeah, I don't think Canada will become 51st state. I do feel like we're gonna get through the tariffs. Look, like my portfolio got hit really hard, right? Like I'm not stoked about them. I feel like they could have been done in a different way, but it doesn't really matter what I think. What matters is what's going to happen. And so it just doesn't seem likely that the tariffs are really going to have a catastrophic economic effect. Like I think we're going to come to some sort of consensus. I mean, look, I think the whole world agrees. Well, I shouldn't say the whole world. Like, I think that most people in America agree. Like the trade tariffs were not fair. I think it's really the argument is about how it was done, right? So it's just done a lot faster than anybody would have anticipated. And the question is like, are we going to bounce back just as fast? Like, I kind of think it's a rubber band, right? Like, I've been buying a lot in the stock market because it's like the faster and the harder it goes down, the quicker it'll bounce back up. So, and we saw that the past couple of days too. But yeah, I don't think we're on a recession, but like I never want to. You always want to keep a little bit of a protection to the downside, right? Like in terms of like in real estate, how much money do you want to put down? You don't want to get like over levered and that sort of thing.
Also, I wanted to ask you this just for my own curiosity. So when you're going in and buying like multiple of Airbnbs or multiple of real estate, does the bank want you to put like 20% down on each of those properties, or do you find ways to put like less money down, or how does that work?
Yeah, they usually want at least 20%. I mean, it really depends. A lot of places want 35% down. So we partner with people who want to be like, passive investors. Our emphasis is always on like the risk adjusted returns. So like finding deals that we're protecting the downside. And that's just a lot of real estate in general compared to other things. But yeah, so like the same as the DSOs, right? Like you can only scale, you're kind of limited to scale based on how much money you have at any one time for down payments. So by bringing on partners, it just gives you more scalability. You can focus on your operations of the business. So that's what we do. We just look for partners who want like safe, risk-adjusted returns that still have decent upside. Like mid-teen IRR, high-teen IRRs.
What do you think the future of the interest rate is going to look like? Do you think they're going to go down?
Well, it's definitely capped. I mean, it can't get I don't think it'll get any worse. We're underwriting deals on a 3-year timeline for interest rates to get low enough to refinance. So, we're hoping 5.5% will be back on the table in about 3 years. But
wow. So you don't think we'll ever get to the 3% anymore?
Well, no. I almost hope we don't because think about the circumstances that brought us there. Like, they're catastrophic. To get the Fed to cut rates to zero. So whenever they're cutting rates to zero, it means things are really, really bad. So, I'm sure at some point in time that'll happen, but it's probably going to be because of some unforeseen World War III type scenario that is going to cause that.
Wow. So you think by the interest rate actually going down is not good for so you think something is wrong if the interest rates are going down?
Well, just think about 2020. Why did they cut rates to zero? Because they were locking down the entire world.
Yeah.
When was the last time rates were at zero? 2008. That was a great financial crisis. So look, I'd love for rates to be at zero, but that means that there's probably something else going on in the meantime. So like I think rates are too high. Absolutely. Like I hate it. I mean, it's just money that's wasted every single month to the interest. It doesn't like where does it go? It benefits so few people. But the way I guess the one thing that keeps me sober about the whole situation is just the fact that like if it was different, there would be more competition. So it would probably end up evening out anyways. Like with Airbnb specifically, a lot of people got into the game in 2020, 21, 22 with interest rates really, really low. And then when interest rates got really high, they were still trying to get in the game. They couldn't. There's a lot more competition. The payments are a lot higher. They couldn't make it work. They're getting out of the game. So as a result of high interest rates, even though my cost of interest is higher, my payments are higher, I have less competition. And the same is true with dental. There's definitely guys trying to grow by de novo who are growing by de novo, where the cost for their new real estate absolutely sucks. But guess what? It sucks just as much for their competition too, and therefore there's less of it. So it's kind of like the free hand of the market, in my opinion, working its way through. It just takes a long time. So I think like whether rates are high or whether rates are low, like you could find yourself in a bad situation is like right after the rate cuts, it's like immediately trying to go and find deals. And it's like, look, nobody's felt the pain long enough yet. You know, you gotta hold it. You gotta wait for the cut to really work its way through. But now it is working its way through, and people are understanding like, hey, the returns aren't there. Like I can't sell my real estate for what my buddy sold it for 2 years ago because the returns aren't there for the next guy. And so they're starting to adjust their pricing accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, I was like trying to buy a house in Nashville, and when I was going to the bank, the interest rates kind of came down, and then I asked the lady, I was like, well, my interest rate doesn't seem like it went down. She's like, yeah, it only went down on the credit card, but it takes so much longer to get the banks. It didn't make any sense to me how that.
It is crazy. Yeah, it's related to the 10-year treasury, but it's not directly tied to the 10-year treasury. So like it affects it, but not directly. So like there's been days where the treasury went up and mortgage rates went down. There's days where the treasury went down and mortgage rates went up and the banks just kept the spread. Like they just made more money. So yeah, I don't really understand it. It's something about supply and demand, you know, but yeah, I do think rates will come down eventually, but it would just not be smart to underwrite deals at 3 or 4% interest, you know? Like you gotta make sure they cash flow and they pencil at 7%. And then if you are putting in a refinance, I think that's a couple years away before it's cheap enough to actually refinance.
Got you. For the de novos, what are the interest rates now that you're seeing? That you
for it's about 7.25% for a DSCR loan. You know, if you're buying a real estate. I know SBA is a little bit higher, probably like closer to 9.25% because you're getting 90% loan to values. A DSCR loan traditionally is going to be 65 to 80% loan to value. And so they can get lower interest rate, like 7%. And then the higher interest rate you go, the more risk they're taking, so they charge higher interest rates.
Wow. That's crazy, man. Well, that's a lot of good information. Well, Mr. Austin, thank you so much, man, for getting on here. Sorry for all the confusion. And
no, it's good.
Yeah, man, I love this conversation. I love the real estate. I got to get you back on again and pick your brain some more. And
we'd be happy to do, just we could specifically talk real estate investing or whatever.
Yeah, man, I love this topic. I think it's so important, especially for our field of dentistry, man. I think these are the type of thing that needs to be talked about more and more because nobody ever talks about what are the things that matters in the real estate? What are the things that you should look for? So, man, that's interesting stuff. Well, Austin, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time this Friday afternoon. I know my partner showed up a little bit late, but that's okay.
Yeah, man, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, thank you so much.
I didn't get to ask much, but it was still a blessing to see your face and see you talking to me a lot.
Thanks, man. Nice to meet you also.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Do you want to hang out on